For those who hear, let them hear. For those who see, let them see. May the Christ within illumine the world and know that God is one with thee. Melchizedek, Truth Principle. Entering the silence into the presence of pure being. Why does man of earth seek the silence? What difference is there in that which man calls the silence than that mental state with which he is familiar in his ordinary frame of thinking? With what portion of the brain does man do his thinking? Is it with the objective portion of the brain? And how come that man has a memory? Where is the seat of memory? How does man proceed to enter the state of mental quiescence known as the silence? Can man enter the chamber of silence and continue to be absorbed in all the confusing and conflicting thoughts of the mortal? What part of that which man calls silence does man remain aware of? Of what interest is the silence to man? As man becomes interested in exploring the chambers of silence, the subjective or memory seat becomes permeated with just that which man desires to remain aware of. Man shall be sincere in entering the chamber of silence, for in the chamber of silence it is there that man makes contact with that which is unknown to mortal thinking. It is in the chamber of silence that the formless take form. It is as that which man refers to as the beginning. It is the creative seat, and man cannot enter the silence if man is at variance with himself, argumentative, debative, or critical with himself or his fellow man, while in the mortal or objective chamber. All arguments, all debates, all destructive criticism of the mortal shall be eradicated before any attempt is made to enter the chamber of silence. If there were a heavy snowdrift in front of your door, it will be much easier for you to leave your house if the snowdrift were cleared away. It would not be nearly as difficult as wading through the snow. Therefore, he or she who refrains from argument or debate or destructive criticism about themselves or their fellow man is exceedingly wise. For man cannot enter the silence without moving, so to speak, through the mortal or objective channel. Man's thinking takes place in the objective chamber. Does man then objectify the chamber of silence before he can enter into it? And in all manner of conversation which man causes conflict in man's thinking, is engaged in before he proceeds to enter the chamber of silence. It is as the snowdrift before the door of his house. Therefore, it is expediently wise for man to begin to clear away the drift of all erroneous or contrary thinking and become quiet before he proceeds to enter the chamber of silence. Man shall never find conflict in the chamber of silence. Conflict is only found in man's mortal thinking. The chamber of silence is man's divine self. It is there that man meets God. And when man earnestly enters the chambers of silence, his experience there becomes a subjective picture, and man then remains subject to reflections from the subjective chamber of that which he experiences in the chamber of silence. When man is meditating and seemingly unresponsive to the conversation of those about him, it is unwise for he or she who is in meditation to be disturbed by inquisitive questioning, for there is a sacred reverie in silence. The silence chamber never reflects that which is problematic, for it is free of all manner of confusion. And it is unkind for neighbor, friend, or relative to disturb he or she who is in the depths of silence reverie. Having no fear of seeing your loved ones in silence meditation, for when that is taking place, they are in the presence of pure being. When man emerges from the depths of the silent chamber, quietly and without being disturbed, it is then that the imprint is made upon these subjective records. Silence then continues its action. And when man then is in need of that which he calls comfort, solace, from the memory of the subjective chamber, comes the recorded message that has been experienced in the chamber of silence. How well does man remember all other events of his thinking? Is it therefore not logical that he shall remember the peace and the beauty of his experience in silence? For nothing is ever lost, dear hearts, and when in silence, man has resigned his all of everything to pure being. Let him then, not in mortal thinking, become destructive through suspicious and antagonistic thought of circumstances, conditions, which arise because of that which he feels is unbecoming by his fellow man. The Nazarene was exceedingly wise when he said, "Bless those who persecute you, and revile and say all manner of evil against you. For in so doing, dear hearts, you are heaping coals of the purifying fire upon them. But when man becomes displeased by that which he calls the conduct of his fellow man, he is but becoming a part of that which displeased him. But when he blesses his fellow man in the presence of pure being, prays with his fellow man, though his fellow man may be wholly unaware of it, consciously so, yet he who prays for his fellow man is elevating his fellow man in the presence of pure being. You may say, it is well for we of the council, so to speak, because we are no longer part of the confusion of the mundane sphere of life. As tenants of the physical habiliments, we grant you, we are no longer a part of the mundane confusion, but we are concerned with those who are. And if there is restitution to be made, which there is, then it becomes necessary that man of earth be taught how that restitution is to be made. If it were impossible for restitution to come into manifestation, then there will be no necessity to teach the lesson of becoming a part of pure being. The statement is truth. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And as long as man of earth accepts all that of confusion which he beholds in his fellow man, and conjure it in his heart's consciousness, he shall never be any greater than the one whom he criticizes. For you will be mindful of the words of an age-old mystic when he said, and we are speaking of Apostle Paul. And the Apostle Paul said, and continues to say, man becomes a part of that which he beholds. And remember the story of the narrative of the beam and the mote, it is of no avail for man to enter the chamber of silence until he becomes a part of that which he finds in the chamber of silence. The man who is called wicked is not beyond redemption. And should your fellow man give the appearance of wickedness, behold him in the presence of pure being. For remember and never forget, he is a spiritual entity and not just a physical being. Therefore, blessing him with the presence of pure being, the appearance of wickedness is overcome. But will you say to we of the council, how shall we do this when it interferes with our daily progress? You are seeking progress, are you not? And true progress comes of spiritual growth. All there is of growth has its origin in the spiritual womb of God. For remember, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word became flesh. What word is man of earth to hold in silence? What word is man to speak in an audible manner concerning the seeming undoing of his fellow man? A creative one or a destructive word? Since the word becomes flesh, then it behooves man of earth to think and speak constructively. That is, abiding by the Christ principle of life. And life is divine substance and becomes physically manifest as man expresses it first in his thinking. Before a word can be spoken audibly, it must be first formulated in thought or thinking. Every act and deed is the outward expression of man's thinking and cannot be otherwise. Therefore, that which is contrary to divine law begets all that which is contrary to divine law. And because man has been unschooled and properly taught, man finds himself in that which he calls a state of confusion. There is no confusion in God. Confusion is but mortal. Hate is the absence of love, and love is the absence of hate. Let man hand claps be real genuine. When man in his thinking says, I love you, let it be genuine, let it be real, and let the word hate be unmentioned, unthought of, ever an idle conversation. For remember, man ever becomes a part of that which he beholds, even though he but beholds it in his thinking. Let man become subjective to that which is spiritual, ever, and the snowdrift shall melt and pass away, and man shall walk a path of freedom. For remember, though there be 1,000,000 physical habiliments, there is but one presence, the presence of God. And God's presence is ever desirous of manifesting. Man's thinking is the channel through which God expresses, and man's evil thinking against himself and his fellow man retards the manifestation of God, which is pure being. How often do we of counsel hear man say, I wonder if it will work. I wonder if it is right. I wonder if it is fair. I wonder if it is worthwhile. And that is what they will receive. Continued wonderment, Wonderment. There is no wonderment in God. There is no doubt in pure being. Pure being is devoid of doubt. All doubt exists in man's mortal thinking. Now then, when you approach the avenue of silence, clear away all the snowbanks of doubt before opening the door to the chamber of silence. Erase all that of mortal confusion. Remove the sandals from your feet, as it were, and enter the temple of silence. The more often you enter without confusion, though you may be ever so confused before you enter, leave it on the soles of your sandals, and leave your sandals on the outside. Do not take doubt with you in the chamber of silence. And should you find your loved ones wrapped in the reverie of silence, in the chamber of silence and its awe, disturb them not, for they may have entered for peace of mind. Peace, peace, peace.